everybody, and welcome to the Localization Fireside Chat. My name is Robin Ayoub. I'm the host of the Localization Fireside Chat. This young channel has been around for almost a year now. We've got about 200,000 views and about 1,200 subscribers, which I thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you for our audience for engaging in our content and for also encouraging us to stay online, to keep bringing you good content of discussions with industry experts that adds value to our industry in general. Today, I am honored to have with me Melanie Francis. Melanie is the CEO and founder of Global Search RC, that's recruiting and consulting company that is international headhunting company that is focused on the localization industry. Melanie, welcome to the channel. As we say on this channel, everybody's got a story, and there's of everybody that I've interviewed, and almost 60 now, 60 individuals, 60 experts from our industry that I've interviewed. Everybody, I asked them the question. I was able to do some market research on it, and the research says there's two categories: one by accident, and the other one on purpose. And so, welcome to the channel. If you don't mind introducing yourself to the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself and your localization story, which would be very interesting.
Thank you, Robin. So first of all, great to be on your fireside chat. I really highly regard it and really respect the amount of growth that you've achieved in the first year. Localization, completely agree. I talk to new candidates every day. It's one of the first questions we ask, and it's always fascinating finding out. And I would say most candidates, unless they've studied localization, tend to fall into it. A large bulk of what we recruit is sales, and they do tend to kind of fall into the industry. Me personally, kind of unique story. When I was relocating back 4 years ago from Chicago to set up my recruitment company out of Wales, I kind of, obviously, first of all, you kind of reach out to all your connections, your network when you're growing a business to, try and kind of pull in some favors. And actually, one of my previous bosses, when I was working for Groupon's main competitor 10 years ago in sales, I actually found her a position with a localization company in Wales 10 years ago as a sales manager. And when I reached out to her, she's now the managing director. And I thought, well, great contact. And I didn't know much about it. And I was like, hey, honey, do you have any kind of roles that you can kind of maybe kind of give me a shot at? And she was like, sure. How about a VP sales position in the US? And I had tons of experience at recruiting VP sales. And you tend to find in recruitment, it's more if you've sold a service, there are transferable sales skills. So, I'm a fluent Welsh speaker. So localization really exists in the UK. Welsh language, for anyone that's seen Lord of the Rings, is very similar. It's actually based off Welsh is one of the languages compared to English. So I kind of gave it a shot. And I loved it. And then I had all these other candidates, and I just thought this is a fascinating industry. And it was actually growing still during COVID, which is amazing. And, I kind of thought, how vast really can this industry be? And even today, 4 years in, I'm learning more and more and more. We just keep specializing. So it's a huge passion.
Absolutely. And you know what? Everybody I talk to, they especially, like, I don't know if I told you my story, but, for me personally, when I joined the industry, I was coming back from a business trip. I was in the tech industry. I happened to be on a flight going home. 2 hours later, I ended up in an industry, got recruited into an industry I didn't know existed 21 years ago. I didn't know there was a localization industry, but the gentleman sitting beside me happened to be a CEO of a company in the industry, convinced me maybe the gin on the plane. I have no idea what it was, but I landed on the other side of my destination with a job in an industry I did not know existed. And, the rest is history. I love the industry. That's why I stuck around for as many years. And similarly, everybody, develops that passion to the industry. And this is generally, it's a unique industry in general because it's based on connecting demographics. It's based on facilitating communication between groups of people otherwise that won't be able to communicate if it wasn't for somebody like our industry who's pushing that bridging between the various demographics and various geographical regions. So
Mhm.
that's why that human passion gets ignited in all of us, I'm assuming, and that's
Mhm.
why we continue driving forward in this particular industry. Now, from your perspective, where are we now? I got to ask you this question globally, generally, from where you sit. Where do you see the industry now?
Where I see the industry, I think there was, with AI, a lot of companies last year were kind of wary. Companies were kind of fearing that they'd be put out of business if they weren't having, if they didn't have a unique tech solution. We did see a slowdown of recruiting last year because it was a bit of a wait and see. So something that I did rather than waiting and seeing was attending tons of conferences to really find out, well, where are we at? And really what we found was there are still a lot of limitations with AI. So that kind of human element is still really important, because AI right now, there's a lot of kind of non-verbal communication, tone of voice. The same sentence can mean different things in different industries and countries. So where I would say we're at is we saw a big upturn in Q4 in recruitment because the confidence grew. And I can say that this year, this month particularly, is the busiest we've been since 2020, when there was a COVID kind of boom in terms of recruitment post COVID. So it is very encouraging. But in terms of the types of positions, we're seeing a much more variation, more offshoring. So in 2022, there was a lot of focus in recruiting in the US. So it was very, very competitive, lots of sales positions.
Mm-hmm.
But now with the emergence of tech, automation, we're seeing positions like traditional sales positions requiring tech skills so that people can adapt quickly to automation tools, AI. But then what we're also seeing is, for want of a better word, maybe the B player sales candidates kind of being a bit exposed a little because they're relying a bit too much on the tech, not picking up the phone. And picking up the phone is still always the best. That human connection is really, really important.
So, Melanie, is it safe to say that most of the activity in recruiting right now is centered around revenue generation? Am I correct by saying that?
Yeah, so revenue generation post COVID was really the main focus. So it was a kind of simple mindset of, for a lot of clients, of we need revenue post COVID. So we need sales candidates.
Mm-hmm.
But then last year, it was more, okay, what we really need to do is start ring fencing clients and really strengthening our value proposition, because things were a lot more competitive in the industry. So what we saw a demand in is we actually filled a similar amount of positions last year as we did in 2022. But what we saw was the average salary reduced for us. It was by 29%, because of things like offshoring, budget cuts, but also recruiting more on the operations side to strengthen the value offering. Now we're seeing an uptake in sales recruitment to really grow because, companies do have more confidence.
Now, you've published a report recently, not too long ago, and it was, perusing through the report, it was you have a lot of good information in there, and you've touched on a couple of points in this dialogue so far. But going back to the salaries, with inflation is high everywhere in the world now, and you talk about salary reduction, it sounds like it's going in the opposite direction of where the economies, not just Canada, United States, Western and Eastern, everybody in the world is suffering from the same thing. Inflation's high, cost is going up, but meanwhile salaries are going down. Like, is that what you're experiencing? Is there an adjustment going through, or no?
Yeah, so we did see salaries reduce, but there was a slight adjustment in Q4 because there was an uptake, as you know, supply and demand, where there's an uptake in a demand for positions, then salaries are going to increase. In terms of looking at salaries, what we're finding is there are more entry level positions being created because companies are looking to reduce salaries. But because of the cost of inflation, rising cost of living, salaries is becoming more important to Gen Z. So the more junior kind of candidates, because they are lower, really that's important. Whereas what we're seeing is the more kind of established employees, they're looking more for benefits such in stability in companies, just because of a lot of layoffs that have happened in the past year. Stability is becoming more important. They have families, healthcare, even private healthcare in the UK as well is becoming more and more important.
And you touched a little bit on this one. I'd like to ask you another question on this one: the impact of AI. Now, so just a question, just a general question: are we like in a ground? I don't know if you know the expression here in North America called Groundhog Day. Are we in another
Oh yeah.
cycle of, oh my God, there's a new technology coming in, and oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen, and now that wave has gone, and we're normalizing this now, and we absorbed it, we're fine with it now, like we did with Logos in, I don't know, in the 90s, and Trados later. Any new technology that comes in, the industry is shocked for a bit.
Yeah.
Then there is that period. I call it like a grief. It's almost a grievance period, right? And then
Yeah.
we go over it. We're fine, and then we tend to learn from it and grow with it.
Yeah, I kind of see AI as like the internet revolution. So it was like, oh my gosh, the internet, and you had to get on board on online shopping, post COVID. If you're not kind of selling online, then sometimes you are put out of business. So I'm just saying it's the new thing, where you kind of need to adapt. But then, once you find your niche, and don't get too kind of confused by all these different AI tools. I can talk about, in recruitment, I was head of global talent for a company of 600 employees. It was a British company that I helped launch with the board in the UK over in the US. And even in I was talking about AI, and really kind of, it's quite funny. One of the board directors was like, yeah, but what do you mean about AI? Because AI just covers a lot of different topics. And really, we were talking about quite simple things. And they existed 5 years ago, like chatbots. So when you're recruiting, you're kind of, just talking to a chatbot first about what you're looking for. Those tools existed. But I always found the difference between recruiting in the UK versus the US. It might sound crazy, but the US were about 5 years ahead of the UK with all their tools. I haven't. So coming back to the UK, a bit more of a panic, but they're talking about tools that I was using 5 years ago. I can't, of course, comment too much about the localization industry, but it's more of a panic than really what it is, because recruitment, similarly to the localization industry, is still human centric. So I really don't see it affecting the industry as much from a recruitment point of view, where there's going to be a mass loss of jobs in the future and mass companies being put out of business, as long as they're innovating and integrating technology and automation tools like we have at our company.
Yeah, that's right. And speaking of that, now, have you seen the impact on the skills, the talents? Have you seen, like, broadly speaking, across the industry and the companies that you deal with, any focus on upskilling, retooling the individuals to try to retain them versus, no, I got to hire a new person? Like, what's the dynamic between retention, upgrading their skills versus attracting new skills?
Yeah, so I would say the best candidates I have, they're actually enrolling themselves on training outside their employment. So, looking at, different things in terms of automation tools, But what I'm seeing, in terms of training, yes, seeing companies train. However, because the tech is quite new, that there's not a huge availability of the training required. So it is more learning on the job. What our clients are looking more for is tech savvy candidates. So we're recruiting at the moment for a production leader based in Latin America, and the importance of being kind of tech savvy and tech curious. So you might not have the answers or the experience, but you're really curious. There is also, I find, a bit of a misconception that seasoned candidates might not be as tech savvy as the Gen Z. Personally, from speaking with candidates, it really is more about your hunger to learn, because this is all new tech. So it's fair game to any generation of any experience.
So, you mentioned here, self-initiative is very important. So you're not going to wait around, as a candidate, wait for somebody to come and teach you this. It's new to everybody. So, you may as well get to learn it on your own and upgrade your skills. And there's plenty of ways to do that online. I was telling somebody the other day, I just developed my first AI app using Chat GTP 4. And
Amazing.
it was just self-taught. I just went online and I wanted to create this app that it does create content in the language, but meaning that if I want to create like a blog in Spanish, I create it in Spanish, but I'm not a Spanish reader and I don't understand Spanish, so it will convert it back into exact English to tell me what created in Spanish, just to make sure that it's valid. And then it puts it through another step of revising it, just to make sure that we're okay with the tone, etc. So,
Yeah.
and just it took me like literally 20 minutes to create. So self-teaching is very important
Yeah.
to, like, if there's two types of talents, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong. There's ones that says, oh, this change is too much for me, I'm checking out, I'm moving on, I'm retiring, or I'm moving to another industry. And there's
Yeah.
another talent that says, oh, I'm passionate about this, I want to learn it, I want to move on to the next level of upgrading my skills.
100%. And I
What's your
think it's,
comments?
yeah, definitely. And I think really just in general, that hasn't changed really ever in recruitment, because when you're looking for a candidate, yes, experience is great, but it's passion to learn, passion for the company, passion to grow, to improve, because that's what companies looking to scale are looking for. And that's where the
Hmm.
real kind of secret sauce is when recruiting, looking for those soft skills and looking beyond a resume. I actually have a client that doesn't even want to see my resumes, would rather kind of go off the basis of culture fit. And that kind of passion, that will to win, that they want to work for your company and grow. And sometimes it's difficult as a business owner to find candidates that are as passionate as you about your business. But if you can find one, amazing.
So one of the things you talk about in your report, Melanie, is the blurring of the geographical boundaries, and which is very interesting, because I was talking to on another episode 2 episodes ago with a sales expert in the field. He's a sales consultant, Jamie Shanks. It's one of my 2 episodes before the last one. So, and one of the things that we talk about is if you take the sales process and you dissect it into steps, into tasks, and you say, okay, there are some tasks I need to do them
Yeah.
within the geographical region that I in as a business or my customer exists, and there are some other tasks that I probably can do them at a lower cost from outside. Have
Yes.
you run into that? Is this model now being practiced?
Well, I started practicing it in my own business when I didn't have too much investment and big budgets. I started looking at recruiting in the UK for my kind of second employee, and then kind of like thought, well, let's have a look at the Philippines, because actually I was learning from you guys in the localization industry. I was like, wait. So many of my clients have big teams in the Philippines, India, Latin America. Let's see what this is about. Let's explore. And yes, we actually do implement that here. I have a great team in Costa Rica, India, that do all kind of the heavy lifting, the sourcing, the admin, the organization, which enables myself and the recruiters to be that point of contact. So it's very important, just analyzing the sales process, and rather kind of loading up one person in a country on a high salary with all the tasks. I tend to say to my recruiters, look at all your tasks. What's a $10 an hour task? What's a 100K salary task? Give me a list of all the $10 an hour tasks. I will find someone else to do that for you so that you can be the best recruiter. So yes, I definitely agree with that.
Now, one of the things is we talk about is our industry is like formed of many companies. I mean, the latest research, CSA research, details it around 19,000 companies our industry has. So, and like any other industry, you've got 20% of the large companies represents the 80% of the industry, and the rest of them is in the middle, small to medium enterprise kind of companies in the middle. So what have been your experience, Melanie, in dealing with small, medium sized companies versus large enterprises? And because one of your function as a company is consulting, is advising on
Yep.
how to. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about your experience between the difference between how do you deal with the smaller size companies to larger size companies?
Well, smaller size companies tend to really benefit from utilizing our service. And we do partner with other industry experts like Christine Gutierrez, who's more kind of on the sales coaching. And what we do is the smaller companies, they kind of come, they haven't got kind of a sales function, and they don't really know where to start. And I love that because I'm a growth kind of entrepreneurial mindset. So what we'll do with them is just kind of say, look, let's stop focusing on the solution at the moment. Let's look at what the pain is that we're trying to solve. Let's look at a sales strategy. It might be that right now recruiting isn't what you need. Maybe it's looking at the strategy. Are we looking for a leadership position? Are we looking for a BDR, based out of, say, Israel? Are we looking for a sales candidate based out of the USA? What verticals are you looking to focus on? Is it life sciences? Is it multimedia? But I'm just super passionate at kind of helping them, make sure at the start, because, retention is so important. But to get the retention right, you need to have the right strategy. With the larger companies, at board level, a lot of the time they've had the solution. Maybe they've got their own research team, they've got their own internal recruitment team. So where we tend to kind of come in is more kind of still educating them on what is happening in the wider market, because they may have an internal recruitment team, but we're at the events, we're talking with lots of different clients. We've seen success stories, maybe some experiences that we've had to kind of revisit, rework, salaries. So every company of any size still benefits from consulting services, but it's just kind of different stages in the process.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened here. So doing these things over the internet sometimes a bit tricky. Our audience hopefully appreciate this. So we're ideally we would want to be sitting in the same location doing these things, but now we're doing them online. So these things tend to happen. Apologies to everybody. One of the things I wanted, it's always on my mind when we're talking about sales recruiting is how businesses view, and depends on the business, obviously, it depends on the individual, but in general, is sales an investment or an expense? How do you read your conversation that you've had over the years with our industry? How do they view it? Is it an expense or is it an investment?
That is such a fascinating question. So what I would say is it's an investment if it's the right salesperson, because they pay for themselves. But it's definitely an investment on the front end. I tend to find that it is the client, it's the employer that is in our industry kind of taking a bit more of a risk because the length of the sales cycle, especially say we work with federal government LSPs, where the sales cycle can take 18 to 24 months to see a return on investment. But also what we see is new business sales candidates tend to be the first employees that are kind of laid off if companies are looking to cut costs. So again, but it's the sales, but we do see that the good sales candidates are still retained and maybe kind of used in a different function, maybe account management. So I'd say good salespeople are always an investment.
Oh, great. And I 100% agree with you. If a bad salesperson is an expense, as a good salesperson is an investment. It goes without saying to all employees, not just salespeople.
Yeah, definitely.
But revenue generation is a journey. Unfortunately, it is not a flip of a switch. All of a sudden, you hire somebody, and next morning you wake up with $1 million in your bank as a business owner. I wish the world worked that way. Sometimes it does, and you win the lottery, but not always. Not always like this. So it's a process, and you have to go through the process, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I actually find so our
you
best
agree?
success stories are clients who they don't wait to hire. Okay, we need a salesperson. Let's hire now, because normally when you're looking, the best candidates aren't available. It's kind of finding a great salesperson or maybe a senior leader for any department is, it's sometimes I say like landing a whale account. So it takes maybe up to 7 touch points. The right person might not be there now, but I always say and advise, so normally at the start of Q4, let's talk about your next 12-month hiring plan. Give us a heads up. And when we're at events, we will kind of always keep you in mind when we're speaking to great candidates. And the best hires have been when our clients weren't looking. And I find a gem like I did in Brazil. A guy, he was just amazing. And I just kind of, with our key clients, I will give them first refusal and say, look, I found a great candidate here. Would you like me to set up an informal introduction, just a conversation? It might not be right for now. And within 2 weeks, he was hired and doing great.
Now, let's move the subject a little bit to diversity, equity, and inclusion. How does that play a role in what you do, Melanie, on your side? I'm sure you're satisfying the requirements for your customers, but does that come up, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, so we're quite lucky in this industry because it's so international. Naturally, it is really multicultural. I think we're also very lucky that we have women in localization that really kind of has done so much work for kind of pushing that as well. It's great to see that women are so well represented as business owners and contributing and generating revenue. Yes, it's something that's important with our clients. There is still some work that I see kind of needs to be done on certain demographics, but overall, I think our industry really has a good focus on DEI.
Yeah, because of the nature of our industry, right?
Exactly. So it's very different to, other industries, I don't know, say engineering, something like that, where you really need initiatives in place. I find that in this industry, on the whole, most, ethnicities and demographics are well represented.
Now, one of the things, like when in the recruiting industry, it's been used for a while now, is AI when it comes to CVs, candidate information, etc. And there was a concern that I've read a lot about in the past, and you talk about it in your report, which we'll share with our audience. We'll put the link in the description of the video and the podcast for people to download it. But there was a discussion around unconscious bias when it comes to sifting through the reams of the number of CVs and presenting what's viable or what's valid to be shortlisted, etc. How do you deal with, or do you have such technology? If not, maybe it's which to a lesser effect will become a human endeavor to, somebody submits a resume, Melanie or her staff go through the resume, and then you make a decision. Does this whole AI unconscious bias on your side play a role or no?
I would say at a smaller company level, not so much. Larger, companies, they do need to have some sort of automation tool on the front end to screen out. But there is advice that we kind of give to candidates. The most important thing is SEO. So to actually see, the data that you're feeding the AI tool is what you're getting kind of filtered, out on. So, the best way really is to look at the job advert, look at the skills that they require, and make sure those skills are on your resume, your LinkedIn. There are actually AI apps you can use as a candidate, like a word cloud app, that will then kind of scan your resume, scan your LinkedIn, and kind of pull out the keywords that are coming up. And that's something that can kind of really, I would advise, help you in overcoming that unconscious bias. But that's not something that we need to use here. And
Well,
really, companies are not paying us to use AI tools to find them candidates, because that's what they can use. For us, it's that meeting people at events, having conversations, and understanding your client and your candidate and its culture fit is the number one thing. Especially smaller companies, very, very important. And candidates more and more kind of swayed by culture fit, the interview process, the hiring managers. Could they see themselves working and enjoying that culture? So that's something that is really important. Yes.
So one of the things we don't talk, thanks for that, Melanie, but one of the things we don't talk about in specific, we talk about it in general, is the language technology sector in our on our podcast. And I'm glad you've included it in your report, which is very important. You've sort of made the distinction between the, when I call them language services versus language technology sector, which is the technology provided to the industry to provide the services to the end customer vis-a-vis translation.
Mhm.
Now, I have a couple of questions on this one. One is, what is, in your opinion, the language technology sector status in the midst of all the AI discussion and the changes of technology? And one of the things I'm noticing is the, and you included in your report, is the salary grid for the technology sector versus the language sector. And there is a difference. I would say overall, the language sector, technology sector pays a little bit more
Mhm.
than the language service sector, according to the grid that you provided. A, what is the reason? B, what do you think the language sector, technology sector's future is looking like in the era where we are living right now, where things are changing quite a bit? And there are a couple of school of thoughts out there. One of them, and that's the reason I'm asking the question. One would predict in the future that TMS will go away. Some people would say maybe not, maybe yes, but technology is still evolving. We're not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
Sorry.
quite a big difference. No, you're right. There's and thank you for paying attention to the report. We've had some really, really good feedback. And report writing, I wouldn't say is my top skill as a recruiter, but it was well worth the 4 months it took us to write that. So one of the key simple reasons behind the salary for tech positions, or let's say tech sales is what we focus on the report, versus service sales, is a lot of them are enterprise level clients. So larger clients requiring more experience, also more specialist knowledge. SaaS sales in general, even outside the language industry, does pay more, but it's very competitive. There was actually an article in the New York Times where, they were saying that, AI is really it's such a high demand that it's shot up in terms of average salaries. But in our industry, what we're finding, because really it's only been a topic really for the past year, there's a lot of companies not quite big enough to be in a position to be highly recruiting at the moment. So there's still a shortage in our industry of, language technology companies mass recruiting, because they're still going through the concept stage, the funding stage. So language services, I'd say about 80% of the demand that we have for sales is still from language services companies. There's obviously a lot of smaller companies, deal sizes, project sizes can be a lot smaller. Hence, compensation plans being smaller. But there are some, if you're a specialist kind of business development director, if we've kind of segmented that experience out, and you've been kind of selling language services to, say, life sciences for 5 years, and you're a true expert, you can earn as much as a language technology salesperson. So it's really being a
So,
expert.
which is bringing me, yeah, that's right. You're absolutely correct. And thanks for clarifying that, because you're absolutely right when you mention the tech sector, the tech sale, they go focus on large enterprises. There's large deals involved, etc. The sales on the services side, some of it does, some of it don't, depends on the customer segment you're assigned to. But which brings me to the one of the other items that are very interesting in your report, and I encourage everybody to download the report. And it's been a conversation in this industry for many years, is the commission and bonuses. And
Yes.
everybody I talk to, two school of thoughts. One is I don't need to pay commission, and the second school of thought says no, you have to pay commission. That's typically what drives sales, is revenue and bonuses and compensation. A salesperson who does not get paid commission, they're set in their ways. They're not driven. They do their job 9 to 5, and they don't need to do the extra effort to move the needle further, or to move the yardstick a little further down the road. And you talk a little bit about that whole total compensation in a variable amount versus fixed amount in your report. Can you highlight a little bit on this one, just for the audience to have a bit of a comprehension as to what constitutes a compensation package for a salesperson?
Okay. Well, as someone that's been in either sales or sales recruitment since I was 16, kind of fell into sales, timeshare, um, which I really didn't have a clue. Here's a phone, here's a piece of paper, book some people, on a vacation they've won. I would absolutely say commission is an absolute must, because you need to be driven. It's a high pressure position. The harder that you work, the more you are remunerated. And that's why really a lot of the salespeople get into sales in the first place. And it's directly correlated. Your commission is normally directly correlated to the revenue that you generate in the company. So in essence, you're not really missing that extra commission that you're paying out to your top performers. So in terms of commission and bonuses, it's always good to have a mix. So commission tends to be kind of an instant reward. I get that sale, I earn that commission, and that can range. We've kind of gone into a bit more detail from 5% in this industry. We have seen one company pay us, 12%, but you tend to, it's all about looking at return on investment rather than we always advise clients, don't start looking into the details too much of your commission plan until you find the right candidate. Just know in your mind what is the revenue that you want this salesperson to generate in the first year, and what can you afford to pay in total. Then find the right salesperson. Maybe, and we do occasionally have sales candidates that say, you know what, I'll take a lower base salary if the commission is higher. because they know overall they're going to earn more. And they tend to be sometimes the best candidates because it's the right sales mindset. Quarterly bonuses are great because, especially in sales positions now, there's a lot of other functions that are not directly related to generating revenue that candidates need to do. So marketing, maybe small to medium sized companies don't have a dedicated marketing function. So you need to, at the start,
Mhm.
generate, work on the kind of marketing tasks. And then things like end of year bonuses are great because they're correlated to the company's overall revenue achievement. And that's where you really get the buy-in of your employees. It's also a great retention tool because your employees aren't going to suddenly leave within kind of the first, say, 11 months because they have that incentive to stay. Maybe not the right reason to want them to stay, just to hang in for the bonus, but we too tend to see that happen.
Absolutely. And you know what? For the right person who is in sales, and that's the persona of a salesperson is a another topic for another day, because there's quite the distinction between somebody who drifted into sales, and
Yeah.
as you mentioned earlier, you fell into sale at the age of 16, and obviously you liked it and it became who you are as an individual. And same with me. I did not study to become a salesperson. From a computer science perspective, I have a computer science degree, so now I got into sales because, again, I drifted into it back in my telecom day. But it's who you are as a DNA. Like, it is not, you can't change an individual that way. You can't take somebody who's an introvert and all of a sudden you say, oh, I want you to be an extrovert tomorrow.
Yeah.
And, one of the characteristics of a salesperson is being an extrovert. So you
Yeah.
can't change who you are as an individual. So a lot of these compensations give the distinction that you are hiring the right person with the right characteristics, with the right specification as an individual to become your salesperson, to represent your organization, and commission that drives them. That's part of their DNA. That part of who they are is that hungry individual that wants to make revenue, that wants to make commission, and that's creates success for the organization that they're hiring them.
And it also is essential because in a competitive
Still there, Melanie?
market, yeah, yeah, definitely. And it is so important in a competitive market where pretty much everyone's looking for that top performing sales candidate. We find our best candidates typically have about 2 to 3 job offers. So you need to remain competitive. And if two are offering commission and one isn't, then I mean, you're just not competitive. And
Yeah,
also, it kind of looks a bit, I have to say, a bit cheap. I mean, how much are you really investing in your sales team if you're not willing to pay commission? How much do you value your sales team? And I've been in that situation where I was, well, they put this commission plan together and I blew the sales out the water one month and they were like, oh, we need to change the commission. But then when the company isn't doing well, then they cut your commission. And as a salesperson, it's just the main reason normally candidates leave if the commission plan is getting cut. So
absolutely. And one last topic, and I want to give our operation colleagues in our industry a little bit of a highlight here. Your report also contains operation statistics and data, specifically around salaries related to localization engineers, localization project managers, and testers, etc. So there's a lot of valuable data for both sales and operation in your report, which is very valuable. Also, can you talk a little bit about the operational side in the industry, and how are you helping the operation team in our industry locate the right talents?
yeah, definitely. So we saw, as I mentioned earlier, a big uptake in recruitment in the operations function last year because companies are really looking to strengthen their value proposition and their offering. So production leaders, we are seeing a lot of focus on finding the right production leader And there's a lot of investment in really finding the right person with the right skill set who's tech savvy. Our government specialist clients are looking more at proposal managers, capture managers, and we're also seeing an uptake, of course, in solutions architects. But also what we see with operations recruitment, not so much with sales, is there's a lot more variation geographically in where, as we touched earlier, they're looking to recruit out of. So there's a huge, as we know, production hub of talent in Latin America, but also recruiters. Companies are looking at hiring their own recruiters, maybe more for kind of the entry level roles, the high volume roles, translators, desktop publishers. So we just recruited a recruiter for a big company, and that person was based out of Nigeria. That wasn't in the initial brief, but we found a great candidate. So it's exciting to keep seeing our clients evolve. Always something new. Never thought 4 years in the role would be so varied, but it just continues evolving, and it's great. Something that was really exciting a couple of weeks ago is really looking at the growing importance of HR and having internal HR. So we've just recruited a chief people officer for an LSP because they're sort of finding and understanding that, as they said, and Richard Branson says, is it's actually the employees that are more important than the clients, because they will take care of your clients. So that's something we're seeing as well.
That's right. That's right. So before I wrap it up, and we're coming up to the time here, and first I want to say is I really enjoyed this conversation. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you on the chat with me. I know we've had a bit of a technical issue here connecting, but we'll put that behind us. The video editing will come out okay. I don't have any doubt in that. But I just want to thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope you come back to another chat, because there were so many other topics I want to touch on. And for the constraint of time, I did not have a chance to target them today. But I really like to have another call with you and dig deeper into the recruiting function itself, specifically on the question of inside the company versus outside the company and the benefits of either model. And I'd love to dig into that a little bit, because there's a lot of conversations around that happening right now. But on behalf of the audience, on behalf of myself and the audience, I want to thank you again. Thanks to our audience for listening. But before we get going here, and please don't hang up after we finish the recording, stay on for a minute.
Yeah.
Any last comments?
Really, it's just great. And I kind of encourage anyone. This time last year, I never thought I'd be on podcasts. I even ended up winding myself up at the Meta office doing a public speaking event in Seattle in December. So I encourage anyone, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, to get involved, whether you're listening or just kind of being involved, because the only way our industry is going to grow is if we really pool in together and learn from each other. We're not working in an office anymore where we're bouncing ideas all the time. And, I would like to thank you and a few other, people who've really pushed themselves out there. And I know this is a passion for you, Robin, as well. I know you do a lot of the curating on the weekend. So thank you for inviting us and continue doing it. And I just urge anyone that wants to get out of their comfort zone to get involved. So thank you for that. And also, let's not kind of forget, in-person is so important. And I know there's an event coming up in the fall in Montreal. So hopefully we can do something live in person, which is always so much better, because the tech can take over.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
I'd love to meet you finally face-to-face at some point in this world.
Yes.
And Montreal sounds like it's a great place to meet in the fall.
Yeah. Well, je parle un peu français. So I can maybe kind of practice a bit of French ahead of Montreal.
We will work together on that one. No problem.
And I will teach
thank you again, and thanks to our audience.
Yes. I'll teach you some Welsh
You'll
as well.
teach me some Welsh? Excellent.
Yes.
I can't wait.
Yes.
So I want to thank you again, Melanie, and thanks for our audience. I really appreciate you. And at the end of this recording, I want to thank everybody for subscribing, engaging with our content, and making sure that you share this content if you feel it's appropriate and you feel it's valuable for somebody. Encourage you to introduce us to another other audience if you haven't done so already. And thanks again for everybody for listening in to the podcast, or if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And Melanie, thank you so much. And thanks for taking part of this conversation.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.